What is going on, everyone? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics. And in this video today, we are going to be talking some more about PSA. So the PSA graded comics, some issues I'll say I see with it, some positives that I'm seeing with it. And we're also going to talk about some sales because we are about a week into people really listing these books for sale now. We've had a few different sales out there just to kind of see how these books are performing in comparison to what you might expect from a CGC graded book. And yes, I know, because there are all kinds of comments on this, and I feel like I got to say it right at the beginning, because if I say it later, I'm gonna get people jumping in right away. But yes, I realize this is early on. They are likely to sell for more right now than they do maybe later on, because you've got people that are just really interested in getting them in hand. They're at more of a premium because they're a little bit scarce right now. And obviously over time, as these books sell more and more, we'll get a better picture. But it's still interesting to see how they're doing right off the bat. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was this video that was put out by the Comics Den. If you don't follow them, go and give them a follow, but they're a much bigger channel than me, so you're probably already following them if you are watching this video and you watch comic book stuff. But they are one of the groups that was able to submit books to PSA early. And so I think they sent in like 5 books, and they just got those back in this video, and they're talking about them and showing them. And there's a couple things here. They also commented on the Newton rings. So just say, like, the Newton rings is still a thing. It's a thing with CGC. It's a thing with PSA. Apparently, they also saw them on the front, not just the back. Some other people had seen them, saying they were just on the back, but they are seeing them on the front too. So the Newton rings is still a thing. I couldn't care less about Newton rings. They don't bother me. If you're more than like a foot away from the book, you can't see them. It doesn't matter. So that's not a thing for me. One thing I really liked that I saw in this video when I was watching them open them was that I know a common complaint that people get with CGC is scuffs and scratches and all that kind of stuff on the cases. The PSA slabs are shipped with this like plastic film over each individual book. And while I am not a fan of adding more plastic waste to the world, I do like the idea that this at least is kind of like a thought that was put in ahead to try to make sure that these books are as pristine as possible, at least when they arrive at the first, with the first person. After that, they have no control. But I mean, I thought that was a really kind of cool little touch, that at least makes sure that the book that you get when it's in that case is going to be pristine, at least at one point. Now, there was another thing that was pretty shocking to me that I saw in this. And I'm going to say this was a big downside. And hopefully this is something that they work out in their process, that PSA works out in their process, because what I'm showing on the screen here, he's holding 2 different books. He's holding an X-Men 28 and a Hero for Hire #1. And what you can see here is that these books are lined up along the far edge here. They aren't lined up on the bottom. They're lined up on the far edge. That X-Men 28, a Silver Age book that did not have a spine roll, was put into a magazine-sized case. It was put into the larger case. And so this is something I'm seeing that is not consistent, because he sent in another Silver Age book, like a Journey into Mystery 87 or 89 or something like that. And that was in a normal case. And this X-Men 28's in a magazine-sized case. I know Mickey over at Swaggle House Comics sent in a Silver Surfer 3. That came in a regular size case. So that's concerning to me. And it's because if I'm sending a book into CGC, if I'm sending in a Silver Age book or newer, I know there is a 0% chance, outside of some absurd spine roll, but a 0% chance that I am getting that book back in a magazine-sized slab. And nobody wants their books in a magazine-sized slab if they don't need to be. I get it if it's a larger book or whatever, like that's just part of the deal of getting a larger book graded. But that is something, to me, in terms of quality control, that should never happen. I don't know if they ran out of like regular slab sizes or something like that, so they had to use that. But that, I would be furious, because that's something that you can't, you're not going to be able to send that back in for a free mechanical or a free fix. I'm like, oh, it's graded, it's fine. What's the problem? But nobody wants that. I'll tell you right now. So that's one thing that should be addressed. Now, another thing that I actually really like, and this is also something that CBCS does. I'm going to try to find the point here where he shows the book. So here's the Journey into Mystery. And you can see this book came back restored. So there's a couple things. One is that if you have a restored book, it gives you the restored information above the grade number. And you can see it says restored AMA mod/X. And so what that means, or what I'm speculating it means, I'm pretty sure I'm right. It's restored, it's amateur, and there's moderate to extensive restoration. So a couple of things. One, I really do like that they don't use a different label color. That was, I remember Steve Borak said that was one of the mistakes he felt he made at CGC, that he corrected at CBCS, that they don't use a different colored label for restored books, because it puts that extra stigma on those books that like this thing is bad. Here's that color, and that's why you get that purple label of Death Note around it and all that kind of stuff. And I think you don't need that extra level of like showing that this book is restored or not. I think just having it noted there is enough. You have the same colored label, everything matches. I like that. If I was president for a day at CGC, one of the things I would do is I would get rid of green labels, I would get rid of purple labels, and I would get rid of the conserved labels, kind of the gray labels. I would make everything just a blue label other than signature series. You have the notations on the label, and that is it. And you get the same color across the board, and they just match and look nice next to each other. I would do that day one. And so that's something that I think I would love to have CGC actually implement. I mean, people may complain and they'll go like, oh, you're just a money grab to get us to resubmit our books so we don't have the purple labels anymore. So be it. Fine, let it be a money grab. But I would make that change. I would get rid of those. Now, one problem though, I'll say that I saw here. They don't give you the details of the restoration on the label, or at least that's what it seems like from what they showed. To get the details on the actual restoration that's on the book, they had to scan the QR code and then go to PSA's site and then look that up. And I do not like that. I think the actual type of restoration, what's been done, should be captured on the label. I'm guessing there's maybe a reason for that. It's like it saves time and money in the process of having to print these like custom type labels with all those types of notes specifically on each label. Maybe that's their reasoning, but that's something I don't like. I don't like that information effectively being hidden somewhere that you have to go and try to search for it, because that especially causes problems when you're dealing with like online sales, or if you're at a con and there's bad internet reception. Like, what if you can't get to PSA's site? If it's all bogged down with everybody using their phones, like there's problems there that I don't like. I don't like that that's done that way. But I mean, but there's some positives. Like I said, I do like that same color, but negatives with that. Now, one other thing that they showed, and I don't think we can take anything from this yet, but this was, they had cracked out some CGC books and sent them into PSA, and all of their books dropped. Now, all of their books that they did that with dropped. Now, like I said, this is just 3 books. We can't necessarily make any conclusions from that. Does it mean PSA grades harder than CGC? Who knows? Like, I think Mickey sent in one book that it kept the same grade as a CBCS graded copy. I think there was someone else that got a grade bump when they had the book pressed and cleaned after they had it, cracked out and resubmitted. So I don't think we can draw any conclusions from that, but we did see, a full grade drop on the Hero for Hire, half grade drop on the X-Men 28, and a half grade drop on the All-Star Western 10. So just something to be aware of, that you are not going to necessarily get the exact same grade when you send, these books in, and you're not going to get the same grade if you resubmit to CGC 100% of the time either. So I don't think this is necessarily like a good or bad thing or anything like that. Just something to be aware of, that you will likely see grade shifts, as you resubmit books. All right. So those are the things I wanted to talk about with respect to PSA and their slabs, the things that I saw in this video. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about was some actual sales numbers that we saw over the last week. Now, the first one is from our very own Swaggle Comics. He had his Secret Wars 8 PSA 9.8 newsstand, had exceptionally white pages. This book, it has the 2000 with the strike through, sold for $1,750. So if we jump over to Go Collect, we know that Go Collect is now pulling in the sales data. And if we go to the PSA tab, you can see that book here. So this is that copy, that PSA book that sold for $1,750. There's actually something else that Go Collect reached out to me to let me know is this is a change they just recently made, is that they're actually getting the correct prices now when it's an offer. So you saw how that was a strike through at $2,000. What it used to be on Go Collect's page is it would say 2,000 with a strike through here. Now it actually has the 1,750 captured correctly. So that, I think that's a nice big positive for Go Collect, because that was one of the negatives that you weren't always sure what exactly it would sell for. You would get the real price on GPA, but you wouldn't get it on Go Collect. And now we actually do see that actual sold price. So how did that perform compared to a CGC 9.8 newsstand? And so if we go to the 9.8s, we look at the newsstands that have sold 1,400, 1,800, 1,800, 1,500, an 18 strike through with the little, let's see, I don't remember what that means. And if identified as best offer has not been yet discovered. So this was earlier. This was before they made that change, since that was back in June. 1,500, 1,200, 1,800. So, I mean, if I was going to look at this book and what I would say kind of the rough prices for it, I mean, I'd say like $1,500 to $1,600, and the PSA copy sold for $1,750. So very strong sale for that Secret Wars 8 right off the bat. Now let's look at the next one. So this was another book sold by Swaggle Comics, Marvel Rivals #1, the Psylocke J. Scott Campbell variant. If we look that one up on Go Collect, we see this book here. We can see that this book sold for $109. So here's that sale, $109. How does that compare to the CGC copies? This was a little bit lower. So we had 115, 155, 125, 131, 100, 161. So this book, I would have probably thought $125 to $130, somewhere in that range for a 9.8. And this one sold for $109. So a little bit of an underperformer there, but still kind of in the same general market. I would say that was about 10 to 15% low. Mickey did say that he felt like he could have waited that out and probably gotten the full number, but he just decided to take the sale, partly because he wanted to talk about it in that video. So, I mean, everybody's got their reasons for buying and selling books. And so one sale doesn't necessarily tell you exactly what's going on there, but we had one that was a strong sale, one that was a weak sale. Now, last week I talked about the Fight Comics #35. This was actually the first PSA book that sold that got pulled into Go Collect. We don't need to talk about that one again. This one was $4.99. If you remember, I said I felt like this was probably about a $400 book in a CGC 4.0. Golden Age, you can have a huge range in prices though. So, I mean, just take that with a pretty huge grain of salt. But still felt like a pretty strong sale for that book, even being a Golden Age book, which we hadn't seen as many of the vintage books in PSA cases yet. Now, the last ones we're going to talk about these are also from Collectors Comics, which is Dave from Comic Book Investments. Yes, I am aware that his dad is the head grader at PSA. I know everybody thinks that that's like potentially some huge conflict of interest. I don't really care. Like he's a comic book dealer. He's selling the books. They're graded by PSA. He uses CGC too. I mean, it doesn't really matter. So then we go to the books that he has sold over the last week or so. And these are ones that he had up on auction. You can see there was a Marvel Spotlight 28, Wolverine 8, a Wolverine 10, and a Wolverine Limited Series #1. Now, one thing that I want to point out, because I was a little worried at first that these might not actually get pulled in, because when I looked at the details for his, I was having trouble finding his sales. And it was because they got listed under cards. So when you look at the category that it got listed as, it's collectibles and art, collectibles, non-sport trading cards singles, versus like the Secret Wars 8 that was under collectibles and art, comic books, comics, and graphic novels. Same thing with the Fight Comics. I believe that one was correct. This one was under, you can see comic books, comics, and graphic novels. So those ones were under the correct category. All of these that were the auctions were not. And I just wonder if that's something with if he has like an automated system for loading these onto eBay and there's some issue there where it's throwing them under the wrong category. I went and checked Go Collect for the sales for this, for the Wolverine Limited #1. It was still in here. So we have the 9.8 Wolverine #1 sold for $530. If we look at the CGC graded books, just to get an idea what one of those might sell for, to see how this did in comparison. And we can see here the 90-day average, 485, 1 year average, 523, 30-day average, 463. So this actually, 485, 490, 550, 337, 550, 432, 445. Like if I was looking at this book, I would think 475. Approximately 475 to 500 in that range would be the rough FMV for Wolverine Limited #1. And this one at auction sold for 530. And so I do think that that's, definitely a big, like a bit of a premium it gets for that, these early PSA graded slabs, but still shows you a very respectable sale for that book. Now let's look at the other books. We had a Wolverine #10 and a 9.6 that sold for 132. So if we look up Wolverine #10, and we'll look at a 9.6. So here, let's see, here we go. Let's make sure it wasn't a newsstand or something. Nope, it's direct edition. So Wolverine #10 and a 9.6. I mean, 90-day average $60, 50-day or 30-day average $50. I mean, sold for double what I mean, that does feel like somebody's just like buying the case, right? Like that absolutely feels like somebody's buying the case. They want a cheap opportunity to own one of these books in the new PSA case, because I have a hard time thinking that that's a repeatable sale. Basically it sold for the 9.8 price as a 9.6. I mean, yeah, strong sale. I wouldn't trust that sale as a long-term trend for that book. Now with this one, it didn't actually get pulled into the Go Collect sales. So you can see here for PSA, that sale is not present. So I don't know if that's a problem specifically with how this was tagged as a trading card, but that one did not get pulled in. Now let's check out Wolverine #8. So if we go to Wolverine #8, again, let's make sure it's not a newsstand. No, it doesn't. I think this was on the back cover, but let's double check. I think yeah, it's on the back cover. So, but it's a direct edition, so not a newsstand. Sold for $152.50, which also sounds pretty high for a 9.6. But let's see. Let's check if it got pulled in. Did not get pulled in. Then let's check the CGC sales data, and we've got a 9.6. This one actually does seem more in line. So 160, 175, 159, 121, 145, 149. So I would say probably 150 to 160 is the rough market value of this book. And this one sold for 152. So to me, right in line with a CGC 9.6. I know Go Collect does tend to watch these videos. So if you're watching these, just FYI, if you're looking at these, there are some of these that looks like they did not get pulled in, and it may have to do, and maybe that causes a problem. I don't know. It may have to do with how those books were tagged in to the trading cards. Now, the last one, we have a Marvel Spotlight #28, first Moon Knight solo story. I think that's what this is. So then we've got a 9.0 sold for $227.50. This book used to be just huge during the comic boom. So Marvel Spotlight #28. And again, let's make sure this wasn't a newsstand. Oh, this is a newsstand, because I think this is one where you have directs and newsstands. Let me check. I don't remember for sure. Let's see. Oh no, 1976. They're all newsstands. They're all newsstands in 1976. So let's look at this one right here, and we had a 9.0 that sold for $227.50. So 9.0, again, it looks to be a very strong sale for this book. So 9.0, 65 with a slash, 159, 157, 150, 200, 200, 153. I mean, I would have said this book maybe 175, roughly 175 for this one. And this copy sold for $227.50. So again, a very strong sale for PSA. And so what we've seen across the board here is actually very solid sales for PSA compared to CGC. And I know this is early on. We can't really draw any firm conclusions until we've had probably a year of sales data, and we've had PSA books coming up on big auction houses and all that kind of thing. But this is what we want, right? Like I know some people will feel threatened by this, the CGC books they'll feel threatened that these are selling for comparable prices. But I mean, in reality, this is what we want. This is what you need. You need to have that competitor actually selling for comparable prices to CGC. If you don't have that, they will never get a foothold in the market and have larger dealers and everything sending large volumes of books to them. It's the reason that CBCS just has never been a legitimate competitor in comics. And it's because, like I know there are collectors out there that say they like CBCS and they prefer to use them because they feel like they grade stricter or they have better quality control or whatever. But their books on average sell for less, anywhere from 10, 20, 30% less. And so when you have that, the majority of people that are using grading as a means to resell their books or to sell their books are not going to send to them. And so you need this. You need these to be comparable prices. And so I think that's a big positive overall for the comic grading market, because what we want from this is we want overall improvements. You want competitors so they raise each other up and give better quality products to us as consumers, as users of their service. So all this to hopefully say that it's a good sign off the bat. We'll see how it works long term, how everything turns out long term, but at least with these first few sales, things are looking pretty solid for PSA. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you maybe learned something new about the PSA graded books. You saw how these books are performing out there. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell, and I will see you on the next one.